and she was just fun too, you know. She was self-conscious in her ways, but she was so free. She would just go out and she was just the life, or she was the life in the group. And like, I mean, it's a silly story, but like being a little bit drunk and skipping down the street holding hands, it was just like, it's something that there should be self-consciousness there in people in their 20s that, oh no, I'm not going to do that because I don't want my friends to see that. But with Kelly, it was just easy, you know?
This is a podcast for Kel. Lisa, who's asked that we don't identify her by her real name, first met Kel in 2016 when they were students at the Cordon Bleu. Lisa and Kel would go on to be in pretty constant contact for the last 2 years of Kel's life, WhatsApping and messaging each other several times a day, seemingly every day.
There was a night when I don't remember, we decided we were going to go, I can't remember the name of it, Hipstery neighborhood, East London.
Shoreditch,
there we go. We went to Shoreditch, and most things were closed, and we didn't realize that most things would be closed, so we ended up just walking around until we found a pub, and and there were these two people from Norway, I think, and it's a silly night, but we ended up just taking them back to central London. We went to the normal bar where we always went, Zebranos. We always went to Zebranos, and Kelly kind of liked the guy, and it was just fun and an easy night. And I just remember Kelly taking his hat and dancing, and I have a picture of her in that hat dancing in this. It was just like, she could just bring people in like it was nothing, and it was just like all of a sudden there were just instant friends. Do you know what I mean? It was just, I mean, when she died, and I posted something about it, the guy that she had gone home with, or whatever she had done, I don't know. But she saw them the next day as well, but she had seen them again before they went back. And when she died, he messaged me, and he was so upset about it, even though he had only, I think maybe they talked for a little bit after he went home, but it wasn't much. Do you know what I mean? And he was so upset about it, and I sent him the picture of her in his hat, and he was just touched, and it's just like, she had this way about getting into people's hearts just really fast. But like that night, it was just lighthearted and easy, and I've never felt that way except for with Kelly. Like, everything, like, she could draw together a group of people that she'd never met before, and it would just be fun and easy and happy. That picture is what our time together was, if that makes any sense. It's the happiness. It's just the being and having fun.
As an adult, Kelly's particular ability to draw together and connect with quite disparate types of people is something that I heard mentioned a great deal in our conversations around the table after she died. I often wondered if that was an innate quality that Kel had, or whether it was a quality that she developed because of her experiences in childhood. In this episode, we're going to talk about Kel as a child, what she encountered, and who she was. Because Kel was so young, it's not until she gets to about age 14 or 15 that we start to get a contemporary picture of what she's like and what she's feeling. And then, as she gets older, there's a lot of reports to friends, psychologists, family members about how she experienced things as a child. And you'll hear those as we go through. But in the next episode, you're going to hear Kel as an adult talk about some of the experiences that we describe here.
It doesn't make any sense because she could have just left me with grandma.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Or in 2009, she could have left you at Petherton Road to be with Des and me in social services. We could have done it.
I do wonder occasionally what my life would be like, or what I would be like if I just stayed with grandma. My grandma was looking after me. I did a lot better in school. Just having someone calm around you who loves you.
Yes, exactly.
That's a big thing.
Kelly was born in North London on the 24th of August 1994. Her mother and father didn't live together. In fact, their relationship ended just a few months after Kelly was born. From the age of 6 months, Kelly went to live with her grandma Della, her mother's mother, who at that time also lived in North London.
Kelly lived with me from 6 months to 7 years.
She was 6 months old?
Yes.
Why was that?
Well, I realized that she wasn't being looked after properly. Her mother wanted all her time for herself, to go wherever she wanted to go, do what she wanted to do. Enjoy life as a teenager would.
Because the mum was 18 when she had Kel? How old was she?
18. Right. And I realized that the child was being neglected.
How come her mother agreed to let you be her carer?
Well, I think that she just wanted to be free. And as long as I had Kelly with me, she knew that she was safe.
Obviously, when we say Kelly's mother, we're talking about your daughter.
Yes.
So why are you speaking against your daughter?
I'm not speaking against my daughter. I'm telling the truth on behalf of my granddaughter, who suffered at my daughter's hands.
Della was a co-claimant with me and Junior, Kelly's natural father, in our court case against the mother in 2018. You might well ask, well, what kind of a mother would take her daughter to court? And if Kelly's mother is as disturbed as we all say she is, mightn't Della have had something to do with that? She was her mother, after all. I obviously wasn't there when Kelly's mother was growing up, and Kel's mother described Della to me as horrifically abusive to her in childhood. But I don't believe that. Della had 3 other children who don't report the same behaviours in childhood that Kelly's mother reports, and I can't ignore Kelly's mother's tendency to make wild allegations about people who stand up to her. I've known Della for 12 years now. I've always found her to be scrupulously honest, and she's a tough and resilient person for sure, but she's also a very principled person who stands up for what's right, even when it's inconvenient to her. Demonstrably, Della was a source of sanity and refuge for Kel, time and time again. But there's no need to take my word for it. In this, you should be guided by Kel. There's so much evidence of how Kelly felt about her grandma and how grateful she was to her. All told, Kelly was actually cared for by Della for 10 of her first 18 years. Kel loved Della beyond measure. As she would say to her friend Lisa a year before she died, "I don't have a mum. My grandma is my mum."
So she was a teenager and she wasn't coping when Kel was a baby?
No, she wasn't. I don't think she was interested, because from when the child was very young, I noticed that certain things you said to or about the child seemed to offend her. Now, for instance, I had a little pet name for the child, which was Cutie. And she would look at me. When I say Cutie, she would say, "And what's cute about her?" Things like that.
I had the same thing. Whenever Kel got a compliment years later, obviously when I was with her mother, it used to be, why do people say she's pretty? That was the thing that I heard said sometimes in front of her, but also in private.
I mean, there were other things, like certain ways that I tried to protect her, like going down in the lift when she was going to ride her bike and stuff like that. She said to me, why do you do things like that? And I said, because I've got to make sure that she's safe. Oh, you think she's something special, don't you? Yes, I think she's something special. She's my granddaughter.
I think it's important to say that no criticism's intended of the mother being aged 18 and wanting to live her own life and letting Della bring up Kel. That kind of thing happens a lot, and it's very understandable. What was abnormal was her dislike of Kel, which would come out casually and in strange ways, and was also noted at that time by Kelly's father and his mother in their statements to the court.
At that time, she rarely came to visit anyway. She was living her life. Not that she didn't ever come, but she didn't come often.
Did Kel see Junior during that time? Did she see her biological dad?
Yes.
And Grandma Ivy,
yes,
his mother. And how often did Kelly see Junior?
In the beginning, he would come sometimes like twice a week, 3 times a week. But because she wasn't around, I felt free to take the child to see her other grandmother and to let her go with her dad sometimes. I didn't say anything to her because even before Kel was born, I always said to her I would like to meet Junior's mom, because she had told me that she'd come from Barbados just like I did. And I said I would have liked to meet her. And she said, oh, she doesn't like you. I said, but how can somebody not like me when they don't know me? It wasn't until years after that I realized that the same thing she was telling me about Junior's mom, she was telling Junior's mom about me.
So she would tell her that like, you didn't like her.
So, like, there was some conspiracy to keep the two of us apart.
So you had her for 7 years. What was she like?
Oh, she was beautiful, content, very intelligent, playful, loving.
What did she like to play?
She liked to play with her toys. She liked to go riding on her bike. And she liked going down on the boats. She just loved hanging out. I knew she used to like running around like crazy. She used to act more like a boy.
And you said she was like a really intelligent kid. Do you remember any ways that she showed that before she was 7?
The ways that she used to speak with my husband, my late husband. I know she loved reading. Whatever she picked it. Sometimes she would just sit and read and read and read. And I remember saying to her she was really good at it. And I said, oh my God. In a few years, I said, I'll be coming to you to ask you what things mean. She just thought it was funny.
Della makes reference in that clip to her late husband. I just want to be clear for anybody who might have read Kel's comments about her grandfather on the Kel Correspondence video. The person that Della's referring to here was not Kel's grandfather, but Della's second husband, a much older man who, by all accounts, was extremely kind. His name was Cliff, and he would have been Kelly's most stable male role model in the earliest part of her life, and he sadly since died. The events described here led to Kel's mother taking back care of Kel. I understand that some people may feel that there's too much emphasis here on the behaviour of Kel's mother, and it's something that I've thought long and hard about. But I think it's important to understand that there was a pattern of behaviour around parenting, and which, in fact, over the years, caused several people to raise concerns with the authorities. In 2001, Kel was turning 7 and still living with Grandma Della in North London. Meanwhile, Kel's mother had had another child, a son, born in 1998. She and her son lived together with her son's father in the father's house. However, their relationship broke down, and the mother had become physically violent towards him, quite extremely at times, according to his reports to both Della and other family members over the years, and to me after Kelly died. Meanwhile, the mother was going out socialising and partying every night, leaving her boyfriend to do the childcare. He had turned to Della, his son's grandmother, for support. However, over this time, relations between Della and her daughter had become strained after Della had been assaulted by her. As you'll hear, she felt that her daughter was taking advantage of this man, and she often witnessed her belittling and humiliating him.
The mum had had a new boyfriend and another child by this man. It was really terrible because he said to me, he called me up one morning and he said that she was going out at night and not coming back. She would get there early in the morning.
It's exactly the same as when I was
said
with
that
her.
Sometimes he was there waiting to go off to work and she wouldn't be back.
Right.
And he had lost some time at work. And he said all he wanted was for her to come and come in to take over from him so he could go on to work.
This was while he was in a relationship with her. Is that what you're saying? He would call you...
They were in the same house, but they were not in a relationship. By then, the relationship had broken down.
Right.
As a matter of fact, so one night I was out. When I got home, there was a message that had been arrested and he was in police custody. Kelly's mother had said that he assaulted her. So I called the number, and the police said to me he couldn't speak to me then because he had already had his one call,
right.
which he was allowed. He said, but he was going to be in court the following day, and if I wanted to, I could come down. So I went down to the court, and when I got there, his solicitor asked for bail. The magistrate said he could get bail and asked what address he was going to. Well, he gave his own address, the address of his house. The magistrate said he was sorry he couldn't go there because she had taken out an injunction against him, saying that she feared for her life and the life of her kids. So I was in the court, and he looked really scared. I knew that if he had gone to prison, he could have lost his job as a prison officer.
Right.
So I stood up and I said he could come to my address because he looked really bewildered. She jumped up and said, no, he can't go there. He can't go there because I've got a daughter living there. And I need to go and visit my daughter. I said, well, I'm sorry. She's not welcome at my place because she assaulted me and I had to call the police.
That's a separate thing that happened with Kelly's mother and you. Your daughter assaulted you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that, right.
And I said, and I had to call the police. So the magistrate then asked me for my address, and I gave it to him, and he was bailed to come to my address. I think that is what made her go to the school and take Kelly away, because she was saying that. Then she started accusing me of having a relationship with her ex. And she said...
Right. Man, it's like everybody. Is there anybody that she hasn't accused of sleeping with anybody?
What? Rachel
and her ex were also supposed to be having an affair.
Yeah.
Obviously, when she said Kelly was trying to take her boyfriend from her, who said that in one of the pieces of testimony?
That was
oh God,
Kelly's dad.
Kelly's dad.
Yes, because when he came around to the house, and once she was playing with Junior, and she sat on Junior's lap.
Yeah.
And she came in. What's she doing there? What's she doing there? That's she's not your girlfriend.
Right.
I think as far as she's concerned, that's the nastiest thing she can say about somebody.
Yeah, but she says it about everybody.
You're having an affair with somebody.
Or with a child. Like
I think it's for want of having something better to say.
But Junior said this in his testimony as well. A couple of her friends from school noticed this. I heard her, just the sexualization of Kel, calling her slut. Mm-hmm. That kind of language, that sexualized atmosphere around children was a thing that was a thing.
Right. I think that, the relationship between myself and her wasn't very good. But then I think that allowing the father of her child to stay at my place is what really split it wide open, because she said, she's my daughter, I'm her mother. What kind of mother would allow a man who's beaten up the daughter to come and live at him?
Well, he's saying
come and live at me.
So who would do that, given that he had beaten her up?
Yes.
Your daughter?
Yes, that's what she said.
And what kind of mother would do that? Why did you do that?
Because I didn't believe that he had hit her. I used to see her do things and hear her say things. Now, many times I've pulled her up and I said to her, listen, the things that you're doing to this man are not right. if it ever comes to the point that you've got to go to court, I said, there are one out of two things I am prepared to do. I will either stay away completely, or if I've got to go, I'm going to go, but I'm going to tell the truth. I said, it doesn't matter that you're my daughter. Right is right and wrong is wrong. One afternoon, the headmaster from the school called me, and he said that there was a woman there saying she was Kel's mother. He said he looked out on the admission sheet and her name was not there, so he was a bit worried and he didn't want to release the child to her, because when she turned up at school before the end of school. So I left home and I went over to the school, and when I got there, she was there. And I said, well, yes, this is her mother. And she said, I want my child, I'm taking my child. So he said, well, he was going to call social services, which he did.
The head teacher?
The headmaster, yes. And when social services spoke to him, they said, well, yes, she's the mother. I haven't got, I didn't have residential order, so she could take the child. And she just took her and left.
Well, how did
I tried talking to social services, and they said I didn't have a leg to stand on. Not in so many words, but they told me it was her child and they could not just give the child to me. So she went away, and I was more or less cut out of her life. Once she took the child from me, she didn't speak to me. Even if she saw me on the street, she wouldn't say hello.
Why do you think she took Kel at age 7?
To hurt me. The only times then after that I saw Kel was when she would phone me up sometimes and she would say, Grandma, can I come over for the weekend, or can I come for the holiday, or something like that. And then I knew that it was because the mother wanted to go somewhere or had something to do, that she wanted to, have her time to herself. But I never said no. I always took her.
So Kelly went to live with her mother when she was age 7.
Yes.
But by the time she was age 9, or just before, no, was it that or just before, Kel was on this child protection register?
Yes.
There's a court order obtained by Islington Children's Services which prevents me from being able to share the contents of Kel's social service records. As a result, I can't tell you exactly why the children were made the subject of a child protection plan while in the mother's sole care, even though I'm looking at it. So instead, I'm going to rely on what I anecdotally understood to be the reason before seeing the records. My understanding was that it had something to do with the mother being neglectful and leaving the kids alone in the house for long stretches. Our side made an application to court to get the social service records disclosed into our case because we believed that they would independently corroborate what we were saying in our statements. I can't tell you what's in the files, but I can tell you that the morning that the files finally came through, my solicitor greeted me with the comment, "Well, it looks like you were telling the truth then." Social services, in fact, had been involved in Kel's life since she was 6 months old, although initially it was only to supervise the transfer of Kel to her grandmother's care. It was only after Kel was in the sole care of her mother, after the age of 7, that social services became involved with any regularity and were concerns raised.
No, social services have been in and out from quite an early age.
But as a result of that, Kelly's brother's father got custody of the little boy, right?
I can't say that it is that alone, but I believe it would have helped, because the final summing up and what the exact reasons were for him getting the custody, I cannot say for sure. But I know he did get custody.
And Kelly stayed with her mother?
Yes. On the occasions that I saw Kel when she came over to me, I found that she was a completely different child. She was like she'd gone into her shell. She wasn't bright and sparky, and she wasn't talking as much as she used to. She got very, very quiet and withdrawn. But I didn't push it. Okay, I've told you the reasons why I had Kel living with me. Could you tell me, after the breakup with you and her mother, why you felt obliged to look after Kel? Or
because of what I saw. I met her in 2003 when she was 9, and I was just mates with her mum for a year, and then I started going out with her mother in 2004, and she and I were together for 5 years. And that picture you paint of her mother of always just going out and wanting to party and do all of that, that remained the case when she was with me. And the first 2 or 3 years of it, I didn't actually realise the extent of the neglect.
When I first met Kel, she was 9, and I encountered a very reserved child, but she was very agreeable, and I remember being able to make her laugh, and I can't remember what about, and I don't remember any details about that period other than just a couple of images of her at age 9 goofing about. But it was quite clear from early on that Kel and her mother spent a lot of time separately in the flat. I would usually find them in separate rooms, very rarely doing anything together. But I didn't really pay too much attention to her in the early days because I was so in love with the mother. And everything that you're going to hear about that I witnessed in the next episode is complicated by the fact that Kelly's mother could be absolutely fantastic. She was beautiful, she was funny, incredibly sharp, and she wasn't interested in going along with the crowd and trying to copy people. She was an original, and she was just enormous fun. And also in private, she would be very tender and very loving. And so this is the deception, really. This is the problem, because the other side of her character is, it's real Jekyll and Hyde stuff. She was also somebody who from the outset seemed to have had a really horrendous backstory. She said that she'd been horribly betrayed by her mother and her elder sister. And then Kel's father had walked away from his daughter and had been himself very violent to her, to Kel's mum. The court had ordered that her son should now go and live with his father, who she said had abused her. And now she was being persecuted by Islington Children's Services, and one social worker in particular, who she said had a vendetta against her. So it was a lot to walk into, and I didn't realise then that this is the kind of drama, in fact, that Kelly's mother creates around her and seems to thrive in. But when you first meet her, because of course she's so wonderful and grounded as well in other ways, you become very involved in this narrative that she's telling. Ultimately, I came to question whether any of it was real and whether it wasn't all just performance and projection. As I was getting to know Kel's mother, she was already quite advanced in a long complaints procedure against Islington Children's Services, who she said had maliciously put her children on the Child Protection Register. And at the time, it actually looked as if her complaint against them had been vindicated because the tribunal ultimately seemed to uphold it. It was only years later, during our court case for Kel in 2018, that the mother, in a bid to show the court that she hadn't been seen as negligent by the authorities, then proffered the details of this upheld complaint to the court, that we were able to look closely at it, and we realised that in fact the complaint had only been partially upheld in areas to do with the case management, but there was no retraction of the decision and the reasoning why the children were put on the Child Protection Register in the first place. This was typical of the mother's approach to these things in two ways. The first is that she presents evidence extremely selectively, But more to the point, she'd only really seemed to be an involved parent when she was in these kind of fights, when her reputation or her status as a mother was questioned. But in the day-to-day, mundane realities of parenting, I'm not saying that she was never involved, but she didn't spend much time with Kel, and in the main was very preoccupied with doing her own thing, and she just didn't seem very interested in Kel. In 2005 and 2006 then, Kel and her mother lived in a flat in Crouch End, and Kel started attending Hornsey School for Girls, where she met someone who'd turn out to be probably her closest and most trusted confidant, Romina.
When did you meet her? Just tell so people can know what the timeline of you and Kel was.
All right. Kel and I were regulars at the late detention at Hornsey Girls.
So you weren't even in the same class? You were just, that's where you
No,
met?
at that point, no, we weren't. She literally recognised me from detention. I was quiet, miserable fucking kid, really antisocial. And she was pretty much the polar opposite. She was really happy, friendly. I think I saw her there like twice. By the third time she was there like, hi, like, what's your name? What you drawing? Or she'd text me after we'd gotten each other's numbers and she'd be like, I'm still at Turnpike Lane, will you wait at the top of the hill? So I'd be even later because she was delayed, so yeah. So she would have just turned 14 on the summer holidays of year 8 to year 9. And then we would have been 14 to 15.
And what did you like about her? What was it about her?
She was sweet. She was friendly. She was incredibly sweet, actually. She was just fucking sunshine. You couldn't not like her. She wasn't overbearing. I was resistant. Do you know what I mean? There are a lot of kids that were like, hi, and I was like, But she was just so sweet. She was funny and she was talented. She was clever. We had plenty to talk about. We had, we'd make jokes and we had plenty in common in that. We liked to draw pictures and listen to the same kind of music and just, we were silly. But I think we both realised very quickly that we were both struggling. We were both struggling, and it wasn't a sense of, oh, I judge that person. It was, oh, she gets it. And it was just warm. She didn't judge me at all. And
At what age did you discover that about each other?
When we were younger, and
but like what,
we
13,
realised
14?
we were both, and we realised we
early
were
as
both
that?
the same person when we were intoxicated. When we were intoxicated...
When was the first time you got drunk with her? How old were you?
Probably about 14, 15.
And where would that have been?
In a park. We hung out in
Right.
Priory Park quite a lot, actually. We had a wonderful time, actually, in school. We did. It was cozy, it was reliable, it was familiar. It was probably a pile of shit, but we made it. We made the best of it, and we had a really good time. She used to sit on my lap. I used to be fat as fuck, and she used to sit on my lap. She's like, you feel like a chair. And this girl's ass was so bony. We tried feeding the hell out of her. In the end, I was like, fuck it, you'll grow up again. So
I'm sorry.
At this point, I just handed Romina a picture that I have of her and Kel here together in 2012. And as you can hear, she had to compose herself.
It's okay, it's alright. I just really miss her so much. I really do. I really do miss her. She was like... I don't know how to explain it. She was just, we all have friends and stuff. And then, I've got this mental ex. And then, I remember she messaged me a couple months before she died. She messaged me because she heard I'd been speaking to him the summer before. I'd had, a run-in with him. And we'd discussed that time, and she literally messaged me out the blue, and she was like, you don't still talk to him, do you? Because I was really worried. I don't want him to come and hurt you again. And I was like, I just, there are just several moments like that in the last 10 years where I just thought, I can't ever do without this girl. I don't know, what is it, 8 months? I'm really not counting. I'm not. It's just every day is a slap on the back of the head. It doesn't get any easier. It doesn't. It doesn't.
Kel's friends describe a much more gregarious and confident Kel than the one that I knew in the presence of her mother. I slowly came to understand why and how Kel felt she had to be very controlled in her presence. I'd come to see that the relationship between Kel and her mum wasn't just complicated and unusual. It was neglectful and, at the very least towards the end, full-on abusive. This is a podcast for Kel.